this is my story about Homeland, is that it's a pretty intense like crime. I think she worked for the CIA, FBI. So Phil and I would watch it, and within 5 minutes, I would be fast asleep. And it's like a really, really intense show. Like not a show you're supposed to fall asleep to.
So intense, it put me to sleep. I get it. Yeah.
So anyway, those people are having a new show called The Accused, and every single show is different because there's a new accused. And I'm like, oh, that's a lot of actors to hire. I don't know if I would do that.
We'd be terrible actors, but they should do a show called Liquor Law.
911.
There's no 911.
NCIS liquor law.
Who served to an underage?
Yeah.
Did you check ID?
Yeah, that bar in Honolulu, man, they did it 2 for $1 and not buy 2 at the price of 1.
Chung chung. That's the Law and Order sound. I made it.
Yeah, that was really good. I'm impressed.
Arizona is a wildly beautiful place, brimming with over 100 brewing companies. I'm Rob Fulmer, the Executive Director of the Arizona Craft Brewers Guild. I'm joined by Deputy Director Andrew Bauman. Together we cover the state, bringing you the best of what's happening at our breweries and beyond. Welcome to Arizona Beer Frontier.
Okay.
This is the first time you've never really just jumped on starting the show.
Well, I was having so much fun. Hey, Rob.
Andrew Bauman.
What's going on?
We have a guest in the show.
Yeah, check it out.
Yeah.
Hey.
Hi. Tell everybody who you are and what you do and how long you've been doing it.
All right. I am Camila Alarcon. I am the attorney and lobbyist for the Arizona Craft Brewers Guild. I also work at a law firm. And I have been legal counsel and lobbying on behalf of the Guild since 2012. So almost 11 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm happy to be here.
What law firm are you at?
Gavin Jim Burnham.
Are you?
Yes.
Wild.
I think recently I talked about doing this for over 9 years, 3,333 days. And then I was like, I haven't doing it for 10. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. Now, 11. So I promised that we would commemorate a marquee time. Same thing. We'd have a happy hour. So you have to pick a date and a relative anniversary of some sort. Like,
right.
Okay.
Like we should do that.
10 years and, 73 days or something.
Yeah.
Sure. Why not?
It's your call.
Yeah, I don't even know when like the exact anniversary was. I just remember I went to the annual meeting in December. And I don't know if I was already hired or I don't think I was. And then I got hired.
Well, great. So then
And
you
then
were
we
hired
did
for the next
rules.
legislative session?
No.
Uh-oh.
My first assignment was we were going through the rulemaking process, and which now we are again.
Yeah, that happens now.
Yeah. So that was it in 2013 to make sure that everything, because at that time they were rewriting the entire Arizona Administrative Code as it pertains to alcoholic beverages, and so.
Are we?
No,
is that happening again?
No. We're just doing a little small
Okay.
part, just a couple sections here and there.
So for everyone to understand, we have laws just like any other laws. But if you have an agency looking after enforcing those laws and guiding the industry on it, they have an opportunity to write rules. Is that something they do for every statute?
No.
No.
The statutes have to have rulemaking authority embedded in them in order for them to have a rule, or else it's in statute, which means it's in the purview of the legislature, which they generally like to keep in their realm of control.
And so they do that so that they can enforce it presumably fairly and consistently.
So the definition of rule is something that either interprets or helps facilitate the statute. So one of the main things in rules are timeframes, right? How long can an agency take to process your application? Those things tend to be in rule because you don't really want it bogged down in statute. There are not the liquor statutes, but a lot of agencies have their fees in rule because you want the agency to sort of revisit them every single year and make recommendations and so forth.
So they need a process that isn't tied to people being elected and maybe not even listening and having the time to review them. And generally, when they talk about rules, they generally invite the industry to comment and participate? Or
They do. There's a required notice period. So you have to post it on your website. You have to post it on, I think, the Secretary of State site. I might be wrong on that. But there's posting requirements so that everybody knows that there's a rule package being in the process. And you have to invite stakeholders, which could be anybody really, to come to the meeting and discuss what they like and they don't like.
So some of the things that might be in rules would be trade practice. So what you can and can't do as it pertains to selling as a brewery to a retailer, as an example. So like what kinds of things would be in there. The law says that a supplier of beer can't provide any financial incentive to put their product on, but how would that manifest maybe in a rule?
So with those particular statutes, it is the way I explain it to people is that the statute tells you you cannot do any of this, but maybe there's an exception in rule. So that's what you can do. So we have two main rules that pertain to this. One is what is allowed by a producer and wholesaler and what wholesalers are allowed to do.
And you're talking about the
Trade practice.
trade practice.
So
incentives.
it's like, one of the fundamentals of trade practice is that you cannot give, as a supplier or a distributor, you cannot give a retailer a thing of value. But there are all these exceptions. And there are exceptions for direct to consumers, and there are exceptions to, sporting events and limited signage is in rule. It's not in one of those two rules, but it is elsewhere in rule. So there's all of these exceptions, and they're found in rule.
Just so we get our terms correct, because a producer in this case would be a brewer.
Right.
We also call them suppliers.
Right.
In our state, if you're a number 3 microbrewer license, you can also distribute. So sometimes you act as a distributor, although you are still a producer / supplier. And I think everyone knows what a distributor is. I think most people know that a retailer is a bar, a restaurant, or a store. Mm-hmm. Just so we get our terms clear on there. So you reminded me of an example. With the things of value, a brewery rep walks into a bar and has a case of glassware. They cannot offer it to the bar, but they can stay there and hand it to customers. So it's the glass is the glass. It has a value, but the value can't go directly to the bar owner. But they get value. So the rule exception is like you can give it to the customer.
Right. Exactly.
Oh, wow, we just nailed that.
Perfect.
They don't always have to make sense though. There could be historical reasons. There could be other reasons why sometimes the rules don't make sense.
Now a distributor could walk in with that same case of glassware and hand it right to the retailer.
Yes, as long as they abide by the $500 amount, which is in statute, which is proposed to be revised in this year's liquor process bill. So that may change. That will likely change. But yes, that they're allowed to do that. And there's a whole bunch of different things in there. Like you can't give customers everything. It has to be limited to $5 in the aggregate, $100. But there's all sorts of good exceptions and rules. So you just have to. Special events is another one of them.
Right. You can't just set up anywhere and start serving beer and charge people. You're basically setting up a bar. So the special event is in statute that you can do this, provided that 25% goes to a charity, some other things that you have to qualify. You have to get permission from the local governing body, unless it's in a licensed location. But all there are things in rules that allow the liquor agents to enforce, to make sure that those laws are generally followed. Yes.
Yes, and there are like details in the rules that don't really make sense to put them in statute. Like for the special event license, the fact that the beer truck could be there until the next day is something that's in rule.
And that's something that somebody has had to say, hey, it's really impractical.
Yeah, to be.
So can we make this exception? Can we all agree? Does anyone not agree?
Right.
And then so that's a process. And I wasn't involved when that other rulemaking process took place.
It took 7 years.
It took 7 years to write rules. And what was the big? Was there a major piece of legislation that everyone had to weed through, or is it really? It was probably really the first time that there was a more mature industry with more players going on 7 years ago that made it complicated.
So when this happened 10 years ago, but it started, I don't know, 15, 17 years ago. I want to say it started right when I started practicing this area. So, that would have been in 2007. So maybe it started in like 2008. And at that time, the rules hadn't been revised in 30 years.
Whoa.
Okay.
So there were all these random things in rules that the industry was like, well,
1977 they were talking?
Yeah.
Wow.
And it was, I mean, I think a couple things had been revised here and there, but if you look at some of the dollar amounts, right? Like the signage dollar amount is $400. That, I don't know how that was interpreted 30 years ago. I wasn't doing this at that time, but it's sort of morphed into, well, what if we just do it at cost, or how much it costs for the distributor to make it? And of course, a lot of them do it in-house, so it doesn't really cost them a lot. So you end up having these like really strained interpretations, and that dollar amount didn't actually go anywhere, but that's one of those things that you probably should revisit more than every 30 years.
In 2007, that would have been in Arizona welcoming new brewery Santan around then, I think.
Yeah, that's right. I think Santan started in 2007, I'm pretty sure.
Right. And there was not a lot going on between 1995 and 2007 in terms of breweries. I think the relative number of breweries was about the same. And I don't think anything really happened for maybe 2 more years, maybe 3. But 2010 and beyond, that's when we started growing 10 breweries here,
quickly.
10 breweries there.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
But since 1977, they just do rules get added to and added to and added to. So like by the time you get to 2010, it's just like this giant stack of rules, or do the rules stay pretty constant?
I think they stayed pretty constant. I mean, I think people did add new rules. And it has been a while, so I don't have like the sharpest recollection of what the rules look like in 2011 before we went through this, before we finalized this exercise. But I would, they were pretty much the same because you have to get permission and reopen all of the rules.
From the legislature?
I was just going to
From
mention
the governor.
Yeah,
Okay.
the governor. They like to lock those things down.
Yes. Well, we've been under a rule moratorium since 2013,
Right.
at least.
Which is why we had to change things in statute that normally would be changed
Yeah,
in rules.
like the tapping equipment.
Yeah, tapping equipment. It's there are conditions when a wholesaler distributor can provide tapping equipment, but as you know, there are a million pieces of equipment, and there are
It's changing and evolving technology.
and there's tabletop stuff now, and so for a while, every little piece was named in rules.
Yeah, and I think it still is. And we had to, and one of those pieces was the ability to clean the draft lines. And because we couldn't reopen the rulemaking package or rules, we had to change the statute because statutes
This was
supersede rules so that breweries could clean draft lines.
there are more breweries that are not distributed by distributors who wouldn't have their lines cleaned or have anyone take responsibility over it. So now and they're still not required, but a brewery that without a distributor can do that, can perform some basic maintenance to get things functional. Doesn't mean they can roll in with a new kegerator. It's not what a lot of our business owners want anyway. The food companies don't provide utensils for kitchens, so why would we be required to do all these things? But all this is because I was thinking like 77, like, well, I was an 11-year-old boy, so you might not even have been born. I don't know, 77, but it was a different world. There were literally two beer companies, and so of course they didn't have a lot of things to argue about. They just wanted to put a bunch of beer made from somewhere else in a bunch of places and serve it as quickly as possible.
And a moratorium on rules since 2013. So the governor in 2013 said no more rule changes?
Yeah.
They like to eliminate rules because this is a Republican sort of plank, is to get rid of red tape or things that would inhibit business. But I mean, that's an easy thing to say. Obviously, some rules are useful, but yeah, generally they like to just lock those down. And I think Governor Ducey had for every rule you introduce, you have to eliminate two or something like that. I don't know if that actually occurred in practice, not in our sphere, but other agencies, perhaps. I don't know.
Yeah, they did eliminate hundreds and hundreds of rules overall across agencies. Our rules are a little bit more difficult to open up because our stakeholders are very engaged.
Sure.
So, and they, those rules, we have rules that no other agency has, or not that I know of. Like we have rules regarding of what needs to be on the application. And maybe other agencies start to do that because there has been legislation in the past few years that agencies can only ask about certain things and they can't make their licensing decisions about things that aren't authorized in statute.
I just want to point out, it's chiefly you that has helped get the special event permit application from like 7 pages maybe to like 3, and I only got to put things on 1.5. Like it's the first page. There's a lot of information. I think there's only a couple pieces on the second. And I don't even care about the third. And
I don't think there's anything to do on the third. I think it's just a list of statutes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that has saved us. And we don't have to get it notarized, which can really take a whole extra day minimum sometimes.
And without the notary, this is what's so genius about what they've done at the DLLC in the past, year, is that without the notary, you don't need originals. So you're not FedExing documents. You can just email them and and then print them out and send them to the department, or email them. Well, they don't like to receive emails of this sort at the DLLC, which I don't blame them at all. You either have to file it in person or file it online, and that's fine. That makes sense. You can't have applications coming in through 6 or 7 different avenues. It'll drive you crazy, and there's no way to organize it.
Sure.
But it's made it significantly easier because now you don't have to.
So we have to thank.
Thanks.
You worked with a couple directors on that, and they literally would ask, like, is there anything else we can cut on this? I'm like, I think we should take a quick break, and then we'll talk a little bit about the Guild's legislative strategy, our wins, what we're doing next, and what people should take advantage of that we've helped with. So we'll be right back.
Ooh, hard seltzer. All considered, defined as beer, by the way.
As long as it's made with malt and sugar. Yeah.
So here, I'm fact checking myself.
Oh, great. I thought you were going to start quizzing me.
No. Because I just want to make sure everything I said was absolutely correct. But I try to be as precise as I can be.
Well, this would be a good time to add a disclaimer that anything you hear on the show is not to be believed unless you speak directly to your legal attorney, which could be Camila.
And it does not constitute legal advice.
No, I mean...
Nor do we have we
just
have an attorney-client relationship, but by virtue of listening to this podcast...
They do not.
They do not.
You will get smarter, though, if you listen to this podcast.
Yeah, it's true. I mean... The very, very tight nuances of the law cannot be very carefully taken apart sitting here. No, you have to have a moment by yourself in your office, really looking at stuff.
Yeah, just thinking.
Yeah. Oh, thinking too.
Yeah. Being like, how...
You're good at memorizing things, I bet.
I try not to.
Okay.
Because you really can't trust your memory. You shouldn't. I mean, studies have shown people have terrible memories. They think they have a good memory. They don't. One of the best advice I received when I was a baby attorney was from a litigator, because I did litigation for a while, and I still do, although now I'm going to stop.
I feel like that was a show, Baby Attorney.
I know. I just heard
that. Baby attorney. So when I was a baby lawyer, somebody told me that you always look up the rule, even if you think you've memorized it. Mm-hmm. And that is great advice. So when people ask me for legal advice, I actually reread the statute every single time that they ask me for it, even if I had just read it earlier that day, because you just never know.
Well, you're putting it into a different context.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So where did you go to school?
Boston University.
Boston University.
For law school.
Are they known for their law school?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
It was a top 20 law school, maybe.
It sounds impressive. If someone says Boston anything, I'm like, well, it's kind of impressive.
I mean, we weren't Harvard, so we were definitely a lesser. We were lesser law students.
Grenada Island Law University.
I was going to make that. Wasn't that Saul Goodman?
Yes.
University of Guam. So you went to Boston University, and did you envision that you would be in this kind of a position, or what did?
Oh no. No, I never, I don't think people, when I tell other lawyers what I do, they're like, well, that's cool.
That sounds fun.
Are you losing out to the marijuana lawyers? Are they new cool people, or?
Oh, I'm sure they are. I'm sure they're way cooler than I am. That's fine. I like you guys more.
So, I know you were at another firm, and they were also mostly zoning and
Yes.
right, and then but you were the only liquor attorney there.
Oh yeah.
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 And then you moved on to Gamage. Okay.
Yes. And I was still the only liquor attorney there.
Oh, okay.
I mean, there's only a few of us in the state, so
right. That's true. Let's talk about that. There are only a few of you.
yeah,
in the
there's
state.
only a few of us.
Why is that?
I don't think most people recognize that this is an entire practice area. And once they do and they say, hey, that sounds cool, I think it's probably a very hard practice to break into.
Mm-hmm.
Because your clients are naturally like, well,
I can do it myself.
I
I read the law. I know the law. They don't read the rules, do they?
and they
Sometimes they don't.
they don't read the rules.
And a lot of times they don't read the law either. They just say they do.
Yes.
They use their memory.
Their memory to learn, to try to remember what they learned, 6 months prior at a liquor training, which is it's better just to look it up. It's pretty nuanced.
Well, and it changes relatively often.
Every year it changes just a little bit.
You need to tighten that up a little bit.
Yeah.
You're stacking again.
Yeah. Every year we manage to make it more complicated.
Yeah.
And more contradictory.
And there's
until we wipe the whole thing out and start over again, right?
Yeah.
You've represented wineries, breweries, and distilleries,
Yes.
but those laws are very different. Can you explain why they're different?
Oh.
They are different. Let's establish that.
Yeah. They're different. And the reason why is that there are 3 different groups came along at 3 different times in which the priorities and the abilities to do things were just very different. So it's, the craft distilleries came much later. So the breweries and the wineries were at one point, I think, in one statute. Then we got broken up. Wine really liked shipment. We cared less about shipment. So they got shipping direct to consumers allowed in their statutes. We did not focus on that. And it just evolved from there, right? Production limits, self-distribution rights, retail rights. All of those have changed significantly in the past 15 years, really.
And beer is heavy.
Beer's heavy. Beer's heavy. It has to be kept cool and doesn't last as long.
And we're real big fans of retail.
Yeah. We really like our tap rooms.
Yeah.
That's true. So, and we like restaurants a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about this. So there are different phases of the law. Mm-hmm. We're obviously big fans of our craft producers, the distilleries and wineries, and we try to do things that hopefully support all of it. We disagree sometimes, but in general, I know I've talked about our guild's legislative philosophy. Let's hear your take on it. What are we trying to do here as a guild and as it pertains to everybody else and all that? Of course, sell more beer, but...
Yeah, we want to sell more beer in more places. We want to keep what we have. We have worked really hard over the past 10 years, but even before, to expand our retail. Our self-distribution has been kept pretty much the same, and I think most people have worked well within those limits. We, of course, significantly increased our production caps about 8 years ago. And as it relates to the other producers in the state, we want to make sure that we can grow all of the 3 industries in sync.
Sure.
I think that's...
We need them to do well for us to continue to do well.
Yeah.
And
it would serve no one to be fighting with each other.
None.
Right. And I just don't see how if suddenly there were 5 different wineries that had whatever the equivalent of a wine pub is, I don't see that as taking away from anything that we do.
Mm-hmm.
So those are things that we believe in. What have we done sort of to blur the lines? The alternating proprietorship thing comes to mind.
Yes. Hopefully, that's still.
I know that you can't disclose anyone that you're working with, any of that, but are you working with anyone on having potentially 2 breweries, 3 breweries, or 2 breweries in a winery or cidery or anything like that?
Not at the moment.
Not at the moment.
Not at the moment. And it is something that, we worked on it for 2 legislative sessions. We felt that last year we needed to clarify it a little bit to really get what we wanted. But without people actually implementing it, it's hard to say what the Department of Liquor's interpretation is going to be of it. We have an interpretation we're really happy with, but there's a new administration, and it could change. A lot of things can change, and that's one of the things about this industry is that it is regulated, and so things change, which is why it's a good idea to double check to make sure that you could do things that A, you heard what you heard is correct, and B, that it hasn't changed in the past, couple of years or in the past few months.
Right.
So, and one of those things is alternating proprietorship. So we don't really have, I'm not aware of the cross-pollination just yet.
Yeah, and it's something that's a long-term strategy, and it was, we have some seltzers. We had them on from last show from Northern 7, which is Wanderlust. We had to change the law to make sure that we didn't run into any roadblocks when our breweries made those malt-based seltzers. And there are other products you can imagine that...
or put fruit in beers.
Yeah.
Barrel-aged beers, fruit in beers, all those things.
So those were things that we felt were necessary to put in place. So the possibility for some of our wineries and distilleries and breweries to work together on some sort of joint project that would make, a destination location potentially, or just be able to scale really quickly and affordably is very exciting. But I understand that this is something that could take a while. That's why we're talking about it now. But one can imagine, there would be some, once it's implemented, that we would have to continue to fight to have our vision of what this means.
Well, beer always prides itself on being innovative.
Yeah.
And sometimes innovation runs up into
Regulation.
laws. So there's really never a time when you're going to be just, this is exactly what we wanted in our laws. Turn off the system and let's just sit.
Right.
Because there's always challenges and there's always innovation happening from our members that want new things that aren't necessarily, they're not necessarily illegal, but one could make an argument both directions.
Exactly.
So never stops.
And, we talked about a new liquor department director who we have yet to meet, and we're anxious to do so. But we have different state officers that can play a role. And, lest you think, finally my team is on top and things are going to be so much different and better. Not necessarily true. They have a vision for running government, and it doesn't always comport with the way things are. So, even if you're one of those people like, we have this administration and things are going to go great for us, there's still some potential roadblocks. They just believe differently than the last administration, and we were able to capitalize on the things that were consistent with our brewery members and our mission, and now we'll have to reformulate and make sure that we take all of the yards that are given and try to mitigate the things that we disagree on. That's our role. Yeah,
absolutely. And one of the fundamentals, at least with the Department of Liquor, is do you believe it should be more of a licensing agency, or do you believe it should be more of an enforcement agency? Or what kind of balance are you going to strike between those two things? Because it is both. It is a licensing agency and it's an enforcement agency. And if you spend more efforts in licensing, people like me love it because you get licenses faster, which means my clients are happier, and everything from my end tends to work pretty smoothly. And if you don't focus on it and focus purely on enforcement, then that falls by the wayside, and you have, have a lot longer period to get
Frustrated
a license.
potential licensees that
and
trying to start a business. Hello, can I go?
And not only starting a business, but getting a temporary extension of premise, or temporarily extending your premises, or permanently extending your premises, or special event licenses, and there's a lot of things that licensing does, but you do want enforcement on some level too.
Sure, and it's also the nature how they enforce. I think a great way for them to enforce things they want from breweries is to talk to us and help us communicate those goals, and that's a really easy thing for us to do, and it's something that our members would value. So, or they could just kind of like randomly pick places, and we'd hear about it, and we'd
send an enforcement officer. Boom.
We would have to tell that scary story, and maybe it gets a few more people to comply. I don't know. That's their decision to make, and it's ours to sort of roll with. But
hey, question.
Yes.
So if there is a producer and they don't fill out their annual production reports,
I was just going to mention annual production reports.
Yeah, what happens if they don't do that?
Well, that is an excellent question. So
that's a rule?
It's in statute.
No, it isn't.
A production report's not in statute, and it's not for all producers.
It's not in statute, and it's not in rule. So
administrative code?
It is not.
Oh my God, I'm losing my mind now.
So this is something that the department started, I forget when, but it was within the past 8 years, maybe even the past 6 years, is that there's statutes that say that, breweries, wineries, craft distilleries can only produce X amount of product per year. And then, of course, the department has like general enforcement abilities to make sure, and general auditing abilities. But they didn't used to do that in a systematic way. Mm-hmm. Now production reports are due on January 31st of every year, in which you have to tell the department how much you've produced in the prior year, which is different than renewing your license. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how it's going to work this year, but how it used to work is that a week after that deadline, Rob and I would get an email from the department that said, all of these breweries have not
failed to produce.
And I wouldn't do anything about it, but Rob would get on the phone and start calling breweries, sending them emails and telling them, hey, you need to do this, you need to do this. And we would get an updated list, a week or two after that. And most of them had complied. Maybe there were one or two stragglers by then. But they came to us first, which we always really appreciated. Because what happens if you don't fill out your production report? Well, you've violated something.
You piss someone off.
Yes. So they can have some sort of enforcement action. I don't know exactly what rule or statute they would cite as you violating, but maybe, overall production, like you can't prove it, or some kind of auditing statute. So it's just best to avoid it. Just do your production report.
I would say two things. One is they can figure it out based on your taxes, and
right.
Do you want to have that conversation about
Would you like them to go through all of your filings? Because that would be fun.
There's that. It is super useful for us as a trade organization to understand these numbers and talk to legislators about the growth, and it substantiates what's happening in their legislative districts. The Brewers Association, we gain a lot of favor from because our state numbers are pretty accurate and timely for them to do what they do, and we use those federally as well. It's helpful for us to understand if there are areas that are growing more rapidly than others. It's super useful for us to predict, to understand the demographic composition of our membership. Are more and more people getting larger based on their numbers? Does that manifest in, can we predict that based on the numbers a little bit that someone is likely to go for another location? How close are we to maxing out on that? We're not necessarily really close to have anyone hit any substantial numbers with the maximum cap, but there's a couple that are there, yeah. To be able to understand that, it might take 3 or 4 years or 5 years or 10 years for someone to reach that, super useful for us. For all those reasons, it's a good idea. But again, do you want them to say, oh, we didn't get these numbers from these guys, maybe we ought to pay them a visit? What's going on there? I mean, not
maybe we ought to pay them a visit. Oops, they forgot to renew their license. Maybe I should pay them a visit.
Yeah. So,
well, if you forget to renew your license, you have to stop production.
I've heard that, yeah.
Yes.
But again, in other administrations, I get the email and I get it done. And at most, if they send an email and I get you to go in there and get it done, at most they'll give you a late fee. But what you don't want is them to show up and order beer and then fine you on top of a late fee and separate charge. So you don't want that.
Our luck as having a producer's license with limited distribution and limited retail is that we can do all those things. The limitation is once that license is not renewed, you can't do any of those things. So if you have a brewery tap room where you're selling beer, but you neglect, you're a little late on renewing, you should immediately stop at the end of
November 30th.
End of November, and not sell another drop because you don't have a retail license. If you have a 12 and you're selling as a restaurant in addition, things get a little muddy, but it's not going to turn out well no matter what. They'll be like, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. You can't do that.
And to be fair, they've
so tricky.
Every administration, even the ones that are more enforcement based, so far has understood this and worked with us so that doesn't happen. That doesn't serve
the beauty of bureaucracy. Yeah. There is inherent
when you
memory.
have when you have very limited investigators to cover the whole state, you don't want to spend your limited resources hunting down breweries that did not turn in a production report.
I don't know why I put us on this tangent. I'm sorry.
Well, the production reports are due soon, so I hope everybody's done them.
Yeah, no, they're little points of pride for everybody.
A lot of breweries are. Yeah, they're like, look what we did. Yeah. We busted that 1,000-barrel level. We busted that 2,000-barrel level. We opened our new tap room, and look how much more we did. I mean, and people kind of like it, and sometimes they kind of hate it.
Yeah, we don't report anyone's individual numbers publicly. We do a lot of aggregate stuff.
Yeah.
So
although it is all public record.
It is, but it's not easy to get for a regular person. Not easy. So, well, this session is in process right now. We have a
legislative session he's talking about.
Yes.
Not recording session.
Yeah.
Not drinking session.
We're also in progress.
So much going on.
Everything's in progress. We are working with other industry partners once again on a consensus bill formerly known as the Omnibus Bill, but it is a consensus bill.
Yes.
We have a couple of pieces in there. We seem to have always a little bit here, a little bit there on these. And so far, so good. The biggest one would be we are asking for a comparable festival license. This might be confusing to people who go to festivals. This is not a special event license, as you would know. Strong Beer, February 18th. Tickets on sale right now.
StrongBeerFest.com.
Salt River Fields, Scottsdale area. Anyway, that is a special event license. A festival license, as it's known to the liquor department and commonly used by wineries and distilleries, is an event for them to sell packaged to-go beer. In their context, they can occur simultaneously.
Yes.
That's not how we would generally do that. And so there probably will never be an opportunity to buy to-go beer at Strong Beer Festival. There may be other smaller events that we feel, as someone who holds a license to that and is responsible in some way for your alcohol consumption, that we would do that. But this would be an opportunity for something like a farmer's market where if that market agrees, if they get local approval, that you would be able to sell beer to go at those venues. Or we would, as a guild, we would look for creating opportunities where maybe multiple breweries would do that. That's what we're asking for. It has a high likelihood of being successful. It's just a matter of how much other things are going on in the state
Consensus.
house.
Oh.
Other
bill?
Other types of bills. No, we have consensus on it. It's in the bill.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's it already has a bill number.
Is there a history of the consensus bill ever not being passed?
Oh, let's not talk about that.
I don't want to talk about that.
No, not that I know of.
Yeah.
But let's not.
Well, past
let's not bring that bad energy and not
Well,
having the consensus bill passed
Okay.
because it is.
Our lobbyists,
I mean, it
our
could be
lobbyists
that they just
superstitious.
get-
The answer is yes.
They could
No,
just get
no, actually
busy
not.
doing other crap and not get to it. Is that a thing?
It could happen.
Or we can just have a never-ending legislative session.
Oh yeah,
That
that's
can
true.
happen
That's
too.
true.
And then-
that is a
and
more
then-
likely scenario.
And then it may pass, and,
and
it may
never get
it-
put into law
it may get.
till the next year.
But then we'll have like Groundhog Day, right?
Wow.
We're just
Yeah.
gonna have
Wow.
this legislative session last forever and ever and ever and ever.
Exactly. So I think that's why I said it's a high likelihood. Those are the two things that I worry about: is the length of the session and what they have going on, and how much time. Because there's a clock on this. Even though they can extend the session, there is a clock. There is a point when they will not hear any more bills, and if they're not through a certain part of the process, they have to get through the House and the Senate. They have to go through all the committees before that. They have to get transmitted between the bodies. They have to get sent to the governor. Literally, a bill could have all those hurdles and not be transmitted by either the Speaker of the House or the Senate President to the governor. And the governor will be like, yeah, don't bother with it. I'm not going to sign it, and you don't want it to be signed. So that could happen.
Yes.
I don't think it would happen with this bill,
No.
but I can think of a million bills that are going to get vetoed this year. So
Vetoed or not make it up there for whatever reason, or it's going to be a really tough session. And luckily, we only have to worry about that one bill so far. There might be
Right.
others that we don't know
The
about.
dark horse, yeah.
Yes.
Well, there's one other piece on there that I recall that's significant to us, and that is to change the schedule for tax filings for breweries from quarterly to annually. Andrew, you've done this. This
Monthly
is monthly to
annually.
To annually, yeah.
Yeah.
You've done this. How much of a relief is that going to be for all of our breweries, but mostly smaller breweries? Yes.
Yes. What if you don't produce in that month?
You still got to file.
You
Yeah.
still have to file. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, it's not crazy, but it's it likely because of the process. I mean, the examples that I know would take, say it takes 6 hours to do it for a brewery. It might take 12 or 18 hours to do a whole year, but it's 6 hours a month or 12 or 18 hours for the whole year. Like if you're just focused on doing that, boom, you get it knocked out. Otherwise, it's a day. Otherwise, it's maybe 2, 3 tops for the whole year.
It's kind of a question of how many tabs do you have open in your browser.
It's kind of a question of how many tabs you have open.
If you have 24 tabs open, you're not spending
If
a lot
you
of time
can
on it.
print a QuickBooks report about who did I sell to this year and then put it all on one form, just imagine how much different that is. Even if it's the same number spread across the year, filling that form out and transferring those numbers, super pain in the butt. So this is a pretty cool thing.
Yeah. Imagine if we had to file our income taxes every month.
Yeah.
Ew. I think some people do. Yeah. Some of those, probably those Bitcoin guys or something.
Yeah.
No. So we have that going on. You mentioned, Bills, that there's a thing called playing defense too. I mean,
Yeah, absolutely. That's a big thing of what we do during the legislative session is see what kind of anti-beer bills there are out there. And, in the past, there's been quite a few. For instance, a few years ago, we had the Sazerac bill, right?
Yeah.
With the little refrigerators. And, this year's consensus bill actually nips that in the bud, right?
Yeah. That's right. So we have put language in that refrigerators cannot be part of things of value that are able to be done
by a wholesaler.
By a wholesale. Look at that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the Sazerac bill was, we felt it was a way for a bunch of free things to go into the system. And the problem with any of these regulations is like anytime you do this, there's a million ways you squeeze the bottle of toothpaste and it just comes out somewhere. And you're adding a whole another layer of I don't know, quite frankly, garbage refrigerators that are going to end up in landfills. It takes up floor space. They're going to be used for beer. They're going to be used for other things. Sometimes it just muddies the water too much to understand where this came from, who paid for it. And it just creates, again, beer is heavy. We can't afford to have a similar program for every brewery.
No, we can't. And our laws, fundamentally, we don't have a pay-to-play system. And that is a fundamental concept of the 3-tier system. And so unlike when you go to the grocery store and, you go down any aisle.
Let's go.
The chips,
chips,
right?
Potato chips.
Yeah. You have all sorts of different brands, but they're made from, a handful of manufacturers. And where they are located, they pay for it. They pay for the eye level location. That is completely illegal in the alcohol world.
Right. And by way of, illustration, there are no Arizona craft chip producers.
No.
No, there used to be.
Yeah. And so, so when you can't pay for positioning on the shelf or behind the bar or then if you create too many exceptions to it, then you do in essence have a pay to play system. And that's what happened with the refrigerators, is that it just sort of, elbowed its way in a little bit, and you start having to pay to play. Because where are you going to put those tiny refrigerators if it's not right by the cash register?
And who says it has to be tiny?
There was a
size
limitation.
There was a cost too, but you can get that cost down by ordering, I don't know,
1,000,
10,000
10,000 across the country. Our wholesalers weren't really fond of it. Our beer wholesalers, so they have to sit on these in warehouses. If it breaks, who replaces it? Who fixes it?
Right.
If it suddenly is missing, which happens, it ends up in some purchaser's, garage.
Homebrewer's garage. What?
Yeah.
They wouldn't do that.
So that
that that was something that we had spent a considerable amount of, our resources, and we had also other stakeholders that, helped us, most definitely BWDA, the Beer Wine Distributors of Arizona, which, we do tend to work with closely on legislative issues, and that's a partnership we very, very much appreciate. And it is, we've all agreed to work in this system, and we need to update it every single year. And it's good for us to have the consensus bill, to have an open discussion of like, what do we need to, what kind of innovations have happened in the industry that we need to change and that we need to assess. But there's fundamentals that we've all decided that we are going to play by these rules. And if you start carving out too many exceptions, then it just sort of breaks down the whole system.
I was going to say, like, that's the best defense is having these ideas shared and sort of shot down or discussed, and maybe what they thought is a good idea is unworkable. Having that discussion beforehand, all that time, meeting with people separately in a group, that's much more efficient, and we can have some of the bad ideas go away. It doesn't mean they won't come back in another bill,
right?
But generally they don't if they receive a lot of negative from the group, because they know that they'll be lobbied against separately on that issue. So that's a really important part, and leveraging all the connections. I mean, we have our favorite legislators, some other people have theirs, knowing that the good ideas are going to be discussed and the bad ideas are going to be discussed negatively. That's a huge part of the process of playing defense. Is, again, like I always say, like, we're going to make some more friends. Just to switch points and to illustrate more of what we're talking about, I often tell people you have to sort of imagine the worst case scenario when you're talking about making a liquor law change. Like, if somebody with unlimited resources or time or a team of people, how would they take what you want to change and make it the worst thing possible for everybody or you? And so in this refrigerator example, every once in a while, a small brewery's like, hey, I got this really favorite, tap room. I'm in a small town.
They're willing to put on a bunch of my cans.
I have like my old homebrew kegger. Can I just give it to them? Well, there's your answer. The answer is no. It's a thing of value. And also, how would you feel about the next bigger brewery doing that, and the next bigger brewery, and then something like, which you hear about in other states, like just tons of free refrigeration, always stocked with that brewery's product. We cannot compete, and even if we could, there's just simply not enough floor space. So who's going to get preferential treatment? So
back to Andrew, beer's heavy.
Yeah, I said that. That was me.
You said that.
Yes,
I agreed.
Yeah, beer's heavy.
Yeah. So
it takes up a lot of space.
Yeah.
And so if you when you have limited space, which you always do, it just not having a pay to play system is very, very beneficial to us.
Huge, yeah.
It is.
Well, and refrigeration. Wine doesn't have to be refrigerated. Spirits don't have to be refrigerated. That makes the beer space even smaller, because does it have to be refrigerated? I've seen it not refrigerated, so I guess it doesn't have to, but dang, it hurts.
Yeah, I mean, we have the ability. I mean, we have. Some states it's illegal. You cannot refrigerate it. Indiana.
No refrigerated beer.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if that's still the case. It was for a long time.
Yeah, it was. I don't know. Like a lot of state-run liquor stores, so in control states, they don't refrigerate because they don't really care. They're not.
And then look at how their industry grows.
So that is another strategy. They felt that was a strategy to limit consumption. They didn't want anyone buying beer and walking out and drinking it in their car. Or
being like, oh, this is delicious. They didn't want that.
They're trying to limit consumption. Limit consumption by not allowing you to buy certain days, right? I think we genuinely agree that a certain time of the evening is the wrong time to be buying beer. 2 a.m. I guess, right-ish. Depends on to go. I don't know how late you can buy to go. Same. Two.
Yeah. It's all alcohol.
Yeah. So some of those
For
things
this
where you're like,
beautiful
okay,
state, yeah.
we'll deal with that.
We are having discussion. I have a friend in town from just recently moved from Wisconsin to Oregon, and whoa, like in Wisconsin you can't buy after 9 p.m. but only spirits. You can still buy beer and wine, but you can't buy spirits, so that has to be locked up. But you can get it at the grocery store. But
we used to be able to buy
all kinds of stuff.
But you could at the equivalent of a 6 license, you could buy a keg of beer at 3:30 in the morning. They were called super bars.
Sweet.
So
super bars.
Those are things that's protected. Like it was done under the guise of limiting consumption and saying, well, it's only going to be these couple of things.
Oh, hey, by the way,
the license.
It's definitely a great idea to buy alcohol after 2 during the Super Bowl. You forget about that?
No,
I hope not.
I was going to ask.
We don't know where that is.
We don't know where that stands.
No,
because that was a law change.
Yes.
And the governor had to sign it, and that governor signed it, but it also has to be signed. It has to be signed by the governor at the time of the Super Bowl. At the time
of the Super Bowl, yeah.
But I don't know if that's going to be signed.
Is it a high priority?
I think so. Oh, I think it's a huge. Not maybe to us, but
I meant to the governor.
Not to me. I'm in
maybe
bed
not,
by 10.
Maybe not the governor. maybe
I'm not buying anything at 3
So the law was they could extend the purchase of alcohol till 3 extra hour.
National championship sports games.
Yeah. So
which really, if you have last call at 3 and you stay open till, I think you could get an extra half hour.
Mm-hmm.
And then you could open again at 6 and sell.
Yeah. So just have like a breakfast buffet that starts at 4.
Yeah.
And only serve coffee.
Yeah.
This would be amazing if we had a national championship sports soccer team here. Then we could have our super awesome stuff.
So the issue is whether the governor will sign it. And as somebody who just put in office, a month or so before the Super Bowl, I don't know. Like I don't know if it's going to get done with a new liquor director who started the 24th of January.
That's today.
Oh,
17th.
17th.
Yes.
He hasn't started because he hasn't reported to us. We haven't had our meeting yet.
Oh God. I'm starting to sweat now. Don't say things like that.
You wanted to be exciting in the show. So I don't know that it's going to be. I don't know that it's going to be signed. I have no idea. And even if it is, like you've been through this, you're waiting for a boss to sign off on something. You're like every minute, it's going to be harder and harder to get it done the way we do it. And I think that's
because if it gets signed like 2 days before, now everyone has to ramp it up to get ready to do it. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Glad I don't have to do that.
Sorry for those streets.
You who do. Yeah, stay off the streets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I assume he's been asked this question numerous times by other stakeholders.
The director?
Yes.
Oh, has been asked which question?
The governor needs to be asked.
Yeah. Are you going to advise the governor to sign the extension for Super Bowl and the Final Four? Because it also covers national collegiate.
Do they have to be? I think they have to be signed off individually, right? You can't just say. I think they have to be signed off as an individual.
She's going to the book, folks.
I am. I told you I wanted to fact check myself because I was like, I shouldn't. Talking about not, always reading the statute. So, and it's easy to find because it was just passed last year, so it's in bold.
Anything that's new in the big book is bold or highlighted. It is easy.
No.
I'm going to tell you.
I think it could be done in the same same executive order.
But she could say this, but not that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that was my point.
Yeah.
It wasn't just I decree any national.
That is so ridiculous.
So are the list of national type events, are they in rules or do we have to?
They are.
No, they're in statute in connection with a professional or collegiate national sporting championship event.
Okay.
I can invent one of those tomorrow. This is the National Collegiate championship tiddlywink event.
No,
Fencing?
I would go
Tiddlywinks.
I would go professional. I don't know that you get a university to take place in that. Collegiate.
Well, it could be the Chandler Gilbert Community College. It's a college.
You'd have to get another from out of state.
A second one? Mesa Community College. No, I got two. It's a championship.
No, it's a regional.
No, it's a champion. There's no other regionals. That makes
national.
it the championship.
What is that?
Anyways, it sounds like it's hokey to me and stupid.
What, to be open till 3?
Yes.
Like I said, it's way past my bedtime.
I won't be there.
I will
But
not be there.
I understand that people. I don't understand why people want to do that. I don't actually. I was going to say I do, but I don't.
I don't know. I just know that you've cursed yourself and me, and we'll be standing at 3 in the morning going, is it over or not?
I'm inventing a new sport. Yes.
And then, of course, the other thing that has gotten some press lately, which passed a few years ago as a pilot program and passed last year, is the ability to have open containers in some shopping centers.
Yeah.
So that's
We like that.
Tempe Marketplace did, and who else? Westgate.
I imagine
I
Westgate.
think those two, but I never really saw booze wandering around Westgate. Anyways, it was a pilot program, and now
Permanent,
And also can be for smaller locations.
right?
'cause it
You
was-
don't have to have 400,000
does
square
it
feet
change
of retail.
in that we're sending through, or it's already changed?
It already.
I thought it
changed.
went in
Yeah,
already,
it changed
but-
last year, and
which
I
is
think
why I didn't understand why all of a sudden it got all this press.
because I think it took a while to implement. So the law wasn't effective until whenever
It also came
September.
up because we reduced the square footage.
Yeah.
I think only
Sure.
1 or 2 places in the state qualified
Yeah.
for the original.
Well, but do they have to apply for a license for that?
They do have to. There is an application process.
So it's like a BYOB where you send in your info and be like, "Hey, this is us. This is what's going on." But
You
it's
have
not
to-
like a license.
You have to
It's
stab.
just-
no, you don't have some sort of new series license. You already have your license.
It's you have to establish certain things, like you have to have distinctive drinkware from each location,
Security.
security. Yeah, so it's not. I mean, it's not a just go start doing it, but yeah, you have to apply and adhere to whatever conditions they put on the.
And that's another thing that I've seen on the DLLC forms is now you have to have a security plan for every temporary extension of premises. So I have my standard one, which involves me writing a little paragraph that says there's a fence, people will be checking IDs, everybody's trained in Title IV. That doesn't necessarily mean that you have to hire security if your event isn't.
Right.
Yeah, we
Doesn't
talked.
necessitate
We
that
talked a
kind
little
of,
bit during lunch about hiring the right people, and if you are a brewery and you're considering distribution, this individual to my left here has seen every distribution contract available and understands what things can be lined out and which things can be negotiated and which things are generally have to be in there. She's not going to just turn those over to you because you called, but you're paying for that breadth of experience and her individually talking to every one of those distributors. That's the kind of thing you do. Another thing I would, because we talked about licensing, a lot of people, when they start, they list themselves as their own agent. They save some money doing that, apparently, is what they think. But Andrew and I know how often people read emails in this industry. So if you get a notice sent by email that you need to respond to, I'm going to guess you're probably not going to take care of it as quickly as if you had a firm or an individual who, is dedicated to that.
Contractually bound as well. Like
Right.
if they mess up, you're going to come down on them. So
Yeah, so that's the importance of that. And it's also so they understand if you sign with them to do that work, they are familiar with you, your business. You've presumably talked about a lot of things that aren't going to be billed for. So when it's time to get represented, they don't have to
get spun up on it.
Right.
They already have a base of knowledge.
Right. So when you get that email or you get that notification, you get that letter, and I got 4 days to respond now because I haven't really paid attention to this. Is that a good time to hire a lawyer, like with a deadline? No. You got to interview them. And now there's, as you pointed out, there's like a handful of y'all.
Right.
So maybe you find somebody and like, oh, it turns out they represent my adversary also. How is that going to work? I mean, they will handle it professionally, but maybe you're just not really fond of the fact.
Or they say they're an
an
alcohol lawyer and they're really just a DUI lawyer.
That's true.
That can happen. I know alcohol law.
I know there are a lot of people on that list of people who represent breweries, and like, I don't think that's really what they practice in. They're just a lawyer. That's not also ideal.
Well, we're preaching to the choir.
Yeah. I'm just putting it out there.
We're all a choir. Yeah. We all have the same beliefs. So,
what can we leave everybody with? I know we don't have a tagline.
Yeah, what's the tagline supposed to be?
What should we call it?
We're asking you.
What?
We're asking you what the tagline is for our show.
For your show?
The whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, how do we close this out?
How do we do that? We don't have that yet.
Like, happy trails.
Be good to each other. That's what Lester Holt always says.
Cheers?
Cheers.
Yeah, cheers. Good. That's very concise.
Seems like it's like everyone does that.
Spay neuter your pets.
I mean, how many beer podcasts do you listen to?
Oh, a lot.
Wow. Apparently about 4 fewer than I'm expected to, but whatever.
I mean, I think Cheers works. I mean, I don't listen to any beer podcasts. Except for yours. So I think,
All right.
Cheers.
Oh, all right.
So that's really uninventive.
I'm kind of out of luck.
Should we have,
Yeah. Cheers to the adventure.
No, adventure. No. It just happens. Adventure has to be the tagline of like a bunch of breweries.
Everything in the world of Arizona is adventure. Okay, well, we'll sign off now without a tagline. Thanks, everybody. High five. High five.